flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, do a quick roll call. Councillor Elfman.
Present.
Councillor Hutchison.
Here.
Councillor Youngman.
Here.
And I believe Councillors Merritt and Papke are both gone tonight.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor.
Councillor Law.
Present.
And myself. Mr. Forrester, very good to see you.
Thank you.
And are there any additions to the agenda?
There are none.
Okay. Move on to the consent agenda. If everybody's had a chance to look that over and it's correct, open to a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Patricia, and I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
This is Councillor Hutchison. I'll second that.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion before we vote? Hearing none, Councillor Elfman.
Aye.
Councillor Hutchison.
Aye.
Councillor Youngman.
Aye.
Councillor Law.
Aye.
And Mayor votes aye, passed unanimously. All right, James, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not see anything for visitors' appearance, no emails, nothing added to the agenda.
Correct. Nothing was received.
Okay. Nothing for council presentations and council business and staff reports and requests. City manager's report, Steve Forrester.
Thank you, Mayor. So in your packet, you have an updated city manager's report. We're back online. Thank you, Lisa, for helping me out with that. On the dispatch, we're still holding interviews this week to fill out those open positions. We're still short up there, a couple of spots, continuing to work hard to get that filled. Public Works, we're busy, got a lot of things going on. A little update I would expect in the next few weeks on the final version of the downtown arch. Excuse me. At the end of my report, I'm going to ask Matt Weirhold to give us a railroad update. Meadow Lakes, Ron's Comfort Food has renewed their lease for 2 more years. Airport, we've got a couple small grants that Kelly's been able to put together to do some work up on that old wagon road that is kind of in the way of some of the development on that north side of the airport where the new Forest Service heliport is. So we got some money for that to mitigate that issue. And then some equipment for snow removal and weed management. Lots of activity up there with ground leases and new hangars. Planning's busy. Residential has slowed slightly, but we expect that this time of year. On the finance side, if you haven't been in the office at City Hall, please welcome our newest team member, Carrie Miller, to our finance department. We're excited to have her and look forward to what she'll bring to the table for us. From Lisa's desk, we're coordinating with the League of Oregon Cities to host in Prineville the Small Cities Forum for Region 9 in March. We'll bring back some more details on that shortly. Also be advised, Council and Planning Commission will be getting our Oregon Government Ethics Commission paperwork for their annual statement of economic interest. So be ready for that in the next few weeks. We got a little bit of PR work. The mayor's going to do a video about the railroad coming up here shortly. We'll keep you posted on that. And Mr. Papke, Councilor Papke is trying to schedule a governance meeting, and Lisa will get that information out as well. From economic development, just an advisement to the council that we have multiple high-tech and spec development inquiries in play right now from Business Oregon. So they're reaching out to our city to look at some of our capacities. Eric's been working with them on that. I think the point is still interest in continued development of that economic sector. Also, there's an 80-acre Hunter property up by Baldwin that's been on the market, off the market. It's now back on. I see that as a strategic location for something up there, probably tech related. So with that, I'd like to ask Matt to give us an update on the railroad. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, thanks, Steve. So Steve asked me to give you guys an update on where we are on the bridge project. So I'm happy to say we're done. So that's a good thing. We wanted to get that sole source going so we can get on it. We did, and it's finished. When the contractors left, they gave us an exit report. So James pulled a few pictures out of the exit report this afternoon for us, and so we're just going to show a few pictures out of that report to you, to the council tonight, kind of give you an idea of what we did. So we have 3 or 4 pictures here for you. So really quick, what you're looking at here is kind of a before and after of the upper piece. On the left-hand side is what the bridge is actually sitting on, of the pad. When we said that the bridge was kind of floating, you can see that bolt there underneath that northwest. You can see it's just hanging there. This is what we jacked into place when we gave that initial report to the council. We said it was floating in place. Just the rails were holding the bridge. So we pulled in total about 1 3/8 where that ladder and that pin is. The contractor removed all that, put some plates down, and then slid that bridge over 1 3/8. They used levels, like laser levels on top, and brought it over and lasered it in. And when they brought it back down into place, they were less than a 16th off. So that was pretty amazing to me that they were able to bring that completely over and level that whole thing in on one rail was less than a 16th off. The south rail was absolutely perfect. So that's unheard of. They did just an absolute amazing job. The right-hand side is the kind of the finished product there. If you look at what we started with that bolt, it's about 4 inches long. The finished product on the right-hand side, we went with an 18-inch bolt. So the bolts on the bridge now are down through that polymer pad and down into that concrete abatement there, 18 inches now. So we made her stout. We used a two-part polymer, so it's got a hardener in it. So the stuff that it used to be under, it's just your old Portland-based cement, grout. The new stuff's kind of the newest, the greatest polymer. So James, if you go to the next slide, that's kind of the finished product. Looking at straight on, you can see the pad that they put it on. It's, we'll have long life ahead of us there with that. Well, as long as nobody hits it, I suppose. The left-hand side, that's down along the highway. That's what the RV hit. This was in the beginning, this was what we were really concerned about with the damage. This is what took so long, a couple of days of determining, what kind of damage was in those pillars. This was our big concern. Of course, at the end of the 2 days, we determined there wasn't any structural damage in these. It was more cosmetic. But with that, we want to protect it from weather. So the fix was there on the left, you can see they acid washed it. They pinned it. And then on the right-hand side, again, using that polymer to coat that around and protect that from any kind of weather moving forward. The next one there, James. this is right below the base. When the RV he hit so hard that up there by the bridge, he hit so hard that it actually shelled off the concrete and exposed the rebar in the concrete piers. So we had to fix that, and they brought that around and covered up that concrete, so that we didn't have any weather exposure, obviously, and they shaped it in, and that'll give us a long lifespan there. So although it doesn't look like a whole lot, there's a lot of work done there. It took them a total of about 3 days. There was 3 long days. I'm extremely happy with their work. We did a sole source. I had not worked with this contractor in the past. We did have our engineer on site the entire time, watching to make sure that we did have a good job, just monitoring them. And he was extremely pleased with what they did. I would be more than happy to invite them back if we had any bridge work. I would let them, bid on any of their bridge work, provided they were in the area. So we were happy with what they did. So now the next step is, of course, looking at getting reimbursed. Hopefully this week we'll start getting the final invoices. The contractor invoice is what it is. We know what that is. The engineer's invoice will come in, we hope, a little bit less. I'm going to also send the insurance company an invoice for staff time. I think that's more than fair. So in total, we're thinking this whole project will be somewhere around about 115,000 is what we'll invoice the insurance company. We're going to invoice his insurance company first, of course, and hope that we get full reimbursement, and then work from there. So we'll update the council as we move forward, but that's the first line that we're going to take with that. So if anybody has any questions, like I said, it was extremely positive and went fast and smooth, and we're happy with it. So.
Matt, this is Counselor Hutchison. Thank you. It looks like it was a great job that was done. Do you guys have to have an inspection done, or as long as they completed it, then it's a done deal?
Okay, so great question. When not working with this particular contractor, I had our engineer here the entire time. They were jacking and doing any of the structural work. I had him on site watching them the entire time. And so once that structural portion was done, then we were able to immediately re-rate the bridge and take all the restrictions off the bridge. So that's been done, and we're back to full swing. It's put back into full operation, and that's all been done. So we had him on site, and once it was completed, it was already re-inspected and ready to go.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Matt or Steve?
Yes, this is Steve Uffelman. I know that nothing was said about the golf course, but I did play Sunday. It was an interesting day in as much as you all know, we bought some additional golf carts this year. All of the golf carts that the golf course has were out and being used. And the parking lot, and again, this was December 6th, I believe, or pardon me, February 6th. The parking lot was almost totally filled in the paved portion of the parking lot. So one of those things we need to keep in mind down the road as far as expanding the parking capacity of the golf course, because it was maxed out without much impact from the restaurant. So all in all, golf course was doing great. It looks in good condition given the winter situation that we're living with, but a lot of use, and we're stretching our resources. So Matt's doing a great job over there. Zach's doing a great job over
right, thanks, Steve. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you both for the updates, and thank you, Steve, for your update on the golf course. Much appreciated. Move on to the Barnes Butte development update. Eric Klon and Caroline Irvin.
Actually, thank you. Oh, real quick. So Eric Klon, city engineer, thank you. It'll actually be Casey and I. The majority of the presentation will be just Casey giving an update on the grants we have in the hopper and what we're hoping to do. I would remind council, probably 2 years ago, we discussed the opportunity to put the bridge in by Polish. That's finally happening. And Casey's just done a wonderful job using that bridge as match for other grants. And so we thought it was kind of time to give you an update on that. So with that, Casey, take it over.
Good evening, council. Thanks, Eric. For the record, Casey Kaiser, City of Prineville planning staff. Yeah, as Eric mentioned, it was about 1 year ago that council adopted the Barnes Butte Recreation Area Concept Plan, or as we on the staff team like to call it, Echo of the Butte. Josh especially likes that name. And I think we have a slideshow. IT, can you guys put up the slides? Perfect. So as you all probably remember, this is the map that kind of lays out that concept plan that was adopted last February, almost 1 year ago today. And I'd just like to point out to take note of a couple of things there. One is you can see down in the lower portion of that map, you can see the area where the racetrack is and the visitor center. This was an area that council as well as the community kind of really honed in on as sort of the hub or central area there, and an area to be really filled up with kind of more developed recreational things. Some other things to take note of is you can kind of see surrounding the orange and green and yellow area, there's a paved loop path there. And then over towards the left, you can see the location of the bridge that Eric was mentioning, crossing that Hudspeth drain. Next slide, please. So since it's been about a year now since council adopted the plan, we just wanted to give kind of an update on what progress we've made since then. So I've kind of been calling these our phase one projects, and our phase one projects that we've been working on this past year is really that bridge that Eric mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And then you can see the yellow line represents that paved loop path. That's exactly 5K paved loop trail. That paved loop is one of the most popular kind of walking paths out there. And also that when it's paved will serve as kind of our vehicle access for both maintenance and public safety. That was a really important thing that came out in the planning, was we needed a way to get public safety out there if someone had an injury or an accident or something out there in one of the more remote areas of the park. So that was determined to be a real critical piece of infrastructure out there. And then you can see circled in red on the lower right is that is that racetrack area. So there's the half-mile racetrack, and then there's kind of a viewpoint area in the top of the track, which is also a very popular spot, kind of affectionately known throughout the community as Happy Hour Point. I think that's because people are really happy when they look out over the view that's afforded there. And then you'll see just to the left of that paved parking area there. Another thing that was determined to be really important was to make the site as accessible as possible for as many members of our community, regardless of age or ability or anything like that. So having a really accessible ADA parking area there was high on the priority list. So next slide. So as Eric mentioned, that bridge, this is the location of that bridge. And as some of you will remember, we acquired that bridge through a property transaction a couple of years ago. And then we were able to leverage that bridge into trade to secure a grant that I'll talk a little bit more about later. But that bridge was a really critical element because it provided access between the Ochco Point and Iron Horse neighborhoods and those other neighborhoods on Stone Ridge Terrace and North Ridge, those other neighborhoods on the north side of the Hudspeth Drain. Next slide, please. So that bridge is currently set in place. So it's pretty cool to see that happen. And I would encourage any of you, if you get a chance to drive out there, and you can drive down into that Stone Ridge Terrace Phase 2 and take a look at the bridge. That should be completed. They still have to pour the concrete deck on the bridge, and that should be completed by the end of February. Hopefully, it was initially supposed to be done by the end of December, so we'll see about that. But those guys have been doing a good job on that, and that's pretty exciting to see come into place there. Next slide. And then again, just wanted to touch bases on that 5K paved loop trail. So here you can see it superimposed over a satellite image, and that kind of shows you how it'll connect, like that bridge that's going in with the trailheads, both the trailhead over on Peters Road and the main trailhead right now on Combs Flat, off of the end of Combs Flat there by the racetrack. And you can see how that path will go all the way up by the pond up there and along the Hudspeth drain there. So it's one of the most popular areas where people walk out there currently. So having a paved path so people can use that year round is really important. But also you can see here how that provides access to the majority of the site. Next slide, please. So just real quick, this is another aspect. This Federal Lands Access Program grant is a grant that actually Caroline has put together the majority of and just done a great job on it. But I want to talk a little bit at the end about how we're able to leverage all these different projects and resources together to get stuff done out there. And this slide is just to kind of show, you see that red line, that's the portion of that paved loop path that we're incorporating into this Federal Lands Access Program grant. Next slide, please. So, and now I think I'll turn it back over to Eric Klon to talk about another exciting development out there.
So Casey's done just a wonderful job with these grants and matching, different funds. This one's kind of special to me, so I took this one away from Casey, but this opportunity actually came from Council Member Uffelman. And what this is a wonderful opportunity with a team that would include the city, the school district, Sun River Nature Conservancy, and the St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. And essentially, Sun River has 2 telescopes that they would like to offer to the community. So we would be able to essentially foster these telescopes. And our thought is at the current parking area, we have the container that would be wonderful to store these in. One of the telescopes is a large 18-inch reflecting telescope. So just to give you an idea of that size, my daughter Eleanor, she saved up all of her money for several years and was able to purchase this 12-inch. So an 18-inch is very, very big. You'll be able to see the storms on Mars, be able to see very well the rings of Saturn, things like that. And our thought is that we'll team with the school district, potentially have the metal shop help us with some kind of a track system to where we could roll the telescope out and bring it back as needed. And then our elementary kids at Steen's Pillar are currently on a Space Quest storyline. So I'm sure I've talked to you guys many times about storyline. I love storyline education. That's where they pick a theme, and then all of their reading, writing, and arithmetic are associated with that. They're currently studying space. And so my hope is that as a culmination for that episode, we can get them down to Sun River to accept this telescope. So I just very much appreciate this piece of property and all of these opportunities that, it affords us to work with the community. So wonderful stuff.
Thanks, Eric. Next slide, please. So another pretty significant accomplishment out there has been, we have been working with Valier Design and Associates and a team that they put together to kind of refine that hub area and visitor center design. If you remember back to the concept plan map, that was that area that had a pretty significant focus of the community. They really wanted to see a lot of features there that would provide access to as many community members as possible, knowing that that's kind of the area that the majority of the people would be within reach to the widest cross section of our community. So we really set about kind of refining how would that function, how would that road work in conjunction with the Combs Flat extension, where would parking be? And then the idea of the visitor center got refined a little further, kind of centered around the idea that currently we have a visitor center and a chamber of commerce that occupies a piece of property. It's actually a railroad property owned by the city of Prineville Railway, and they're a long-term tenant and they lease from the city. But the idea kind of emerged about, what would it look like if the visitor center was actually located out there at Barnes Butte? And there's some additional resources, some additional grants and things like that that can potentially come into play for a visitor center. So that idea emerged, and as we chased it down with Valier's team, we kind of refined that, and we thought it, and basically the point that we're just about to wrap up their work, and basically the point that'll get us to is having an idea of the specific cost to fully design that, number one, and then to have this kind of refined concept design for how the parking and everything could all fit together. Keeping in mind that there's a school just to the south of there, the potential for that site to be developed in between the parking area and the school could potentially be another school. Who knows? There's a lot of potential there. So we needed to keep those things in mind with the site design. Next slide. So I thought we would just show you guys a little bit of that kind of refined design. So this slide here, you're looking at actually kind of a top view looking down on a potential visitor center design. And you can see there's some parking there for visitors going in and out of the visitor center. Next slide. Then here's kind of a look with it superimposed, kind of where they're proposing that it would sit, and with the view of the buttes in the background. Next slide. And here, this is the portion of the potential visitor center and an event hall that would face out towards the butte. And the idea is to have a big open patio area there that events that happened out there could spill out into the open space and just have these magnificent views of the butte out there. Next slide. Here's just inside the visitor center, again, potential concept design, but this was kind of based on feedback from Kim up at the chamber and her team as to, what would work well for a visitor center kind of layout. Next slide. This one's kind of a cool one. If you look close, you can see this is obviously from inside the event hall portion of the visitor center and looking out towards the butte, but you can kind of see the view of the butte through the windows there. Kind of a cool concept that they put together. And then here is looking from the other side of the visitor center out towards the buttes. And you can see the proposal was to have kind of that building on the right, which would house the visitor center, functioning like a visitor center and a chamber of commerce. And then to the left, connected by a breezeway, as a structure that could serve as kind of an event hall or an event facility. Next slide. And then finally, just another view of the proposed structure. Next slide. So I wanted to just kind of wrap this all up by attempting to kind of explain how some of these different elements work together. So originally we had the bridge was kind of our first resource to work with, and I was able to leverage that bridge into the match for a recreational trails program or an RTP grant, which we were awarded as the first grant that we're actually awarded out there for work. So that was a $200,000 grant. And now with those two resources, we were able to put together the potential match for a federal lands access program. As most of you know, there's a piece of BLM land up high in the buttes up there. So that made that made a section of that roadway and trail that I showed you on an earlier slide, that made that applicable for a FLAP grant because it's providing access to that chunk of federal lands up there. So that would provide us the funding to be able to actually pave that entrance in there, pave the parking lot, and pave that section of trail. Then we've also applied for a 5-star grant, and that grant, it would provide the funding to actually restore that old canal, which would route water into that pond there by the track area, allow us to refill that pond and create kind of some water circulation that would then drain down back into that wetland area down there. So kind of a fun project and really ties into the scenic beauty and everything of that area up around the racetrack. And then that's just kind of the beginning, you know, at each stage that we get another grant, we're able to leverage that project into more, and hopefully little by little, we'll just continue to chip away at all of those features out there that council and the community wanted to see in Barnes Butte. So I think maybe one more slide. Yeah, perfect. So that concludes my presentation, and Eric and I are happy to answer any questions you might have.
And the only thing I would offer up is obviously all of these grants would come to council before we'd move forward with them. So we're just out there scratching for money and looking for ideas. But obviously, you know, these things are big decisions to be made, and that would take community and both council input before we'd move forward with them.
Yeah, good point, Eric. Thank you. Mr. Offelman.
Yeah, I'm curious about the pond. Would you do a bentonite lining of that pond to hold water so that it doesn't leak through as typically land would up there?
Yeah, definitely. And if we're successful in securing that grant, I think that would be the first stage, is to really take a look at the structure of that pond and determine. We would want whatever water we utilize there, obviously we would want to be very conservative and very efficient with the use of it. The idea is that we have the potential to be able to divert water from that canal system out there, from the pond and the wetland, and then return it back to the wetland, hopefully returning as much back to the wetland as possible and just circulating it through that pond. So we would certainly look at that.
Thank you. By the way, I like the concept. It looks good. You folks have done a good job with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Patricia. I have a question. On the paved trails, when is that going to start?
So we're just waiting for the notice to proceed on that RTP grant, which we're anticipating getting late in February or early in March. And then we'll work with Justin to start scheduling that work. In a perfect world, we would have that done in this next paving season.
Excellent. Thank you.
Casey, this is Janet. So is that $200,000? Is that enough to pave that whole 5K?
It is there. So there's a couple of different ways that can go. It is enough for us to be able to get that basic 5K paved loop trail done. Obviously, what we're hoping is that we'll secure some of the additional funding too, and be able to kind of leverage that. We'd like to do at the same time also pave that racetrack and the viewpoint loop at the top of the racetrack. So really kind of depending on what other funding we get will depend how much paved track we'll be able to put in. But at very minimum, with that grant we have now, we'll be able to get that 5K paved loop.
Okay, and then when are you supposed to hear about the flap one and the 5-star?
I think both of those, the 5-star had a relatively quick turnaround time. I believe that was late spring or early summer. And Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the flap grant was November.
Yeah, I would have to check. That one was out there quite a ways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Steve Uffelman. I have another question. Once upon a time when we were looking at the plans and the design for the extension of Combs Flat and Peters, there was an underpass for the walkway so people could come across the bridge and walk up and not have to cross over the the roadway, but could cross underneath. The northern access coming across Peters Road, would the passageway be on the road, or would it be under it, over it, or what's the plan for that section of crossing Peters Road?
Yeah, great question. So the current design has the portion of the road crossing the wetland there by Peters, that section of the wetland. The current design has the roadway actually going over a bridge there and the trail going under that bridge. So it's likely that crossing will be under the road. It, won't have an effect on traffic. And then there will be another crossing a little bit further to the south along the road that will be a street crossing. So there will be two crossing points. One won't have any effect on traffic, and the other will be at street crossing.
Thank you.
This is a Patricia again, and this may be a really silly question, but on the map, it says there's going to be a beaver dam analog. Now, we don't have beavers out there right now, do we?
Oh my gosh, I bet Josh would love to answer that question.
Oh, I got to turn my video on. Okay, so no, we don't have beaver out there. There's nothing for them to eat. That's just a term used for what they are, which is essentially, it looks kind of like a beaver dam because it's made of sticks and posts. It's very natural, and the idea of them is that it's a very simple thing to create, build to back up some water, like a beaver dam. So they call them beaver dam analogs.
Well, maybe just some
Very
OSU
inexpensive
alumni
way
can
to
get
kind
down
of
there.
create some open water that we don't really have out there right now.
Uh-huh.
So that's what that's about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, right now it's just kind of slug tails, and so those loggings would give us some open water, which would be really nice for some elevated walkways.
Any other questions?
No questions. I'm just happy to see this starting. Well, it's been starting, but see this come to fruition, something that the whole council and staff have worked on, and planned for years now since the property was purchased. And I love it. I love that area out there, and I'm glad that people are getting to use it.
We love the opportunity. It's been a very, very fun project for sure.
Yeah, very exciting project, and just a great example of, there was 2 years worth of council involvement and community involvement and focus committee meetings. And so it's just really exciting to see kind of the combination of all that input coming together and then actually starting to see some of this stuff come together on the ground. Very exciting. Really appreciate council's support on this project really since the beginning.
Any other comments for Casey or Eric? All right, thank you both for presenting. That's an awesome update for us.
Thank you.
All right, committee reports. Are there any committee reports from the council? All right, hearing none. Well, no ordinance resolutions. Is there anything else to come before council before we adjourn? All right. Thank you for all the presentations tonight. Very glad to get updated on a lot of that. So if we're finished, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
This is Patricia. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Second.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all.